I'm a Jew from Kentucky, that's what I am. The good Lord foresaw it with his infinite plan.
Shalom, y'all. I'm Rabbi Ben Fried, and this is the Bluegrass Schmooze. My co-host, Rabbi Shani Abramowitz, is on jury duty this month, doing her civic duty, so I'm here to welcome you to our Kislev episode. We'll start out discussing this month in Judaism, which includes a big one, Hanukkah, the festival of lights and 8 crazy nights. Later, we'll talk to Teddy Abrams, music director of the Louisville Orchestra, about how his own story fits into the bigger story of Jewish composers and musicians in America.
Either you're going to do something that's going to be traditionally financially successful, and that does not mean the arts, or you're going to be an artist, and if you are, you better be the very best. You better be the most famous musician ever. We did not come across Europe. We did not escape whatever horrors we encountered there for you to not make anything of yourselves in the traditional sense.
And we know Hanukkah isn't the only holiday being celebrated this time of year, so we'll talk about why so many classic Christmas songs are actually written by Jews. That's all coming up on our Kislev episode of the Bluegrass Schmooze.
Forever a Jew with Kentucky, my home.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Rabbi Shani Abramowitz.
And I am Rabbi Ben Fried.
And this month on the Jewish calendar, we are going to be talking about the Hebrew month of Kislev, which is awesome because it contains Hanukkah.
Woohoo, Hanukkah!
We love Hanukkah, the festival of lights.
Oh, it's a good one.
8 days of celebration and light and gifts and community.
And fried foods.
And fried foods, which we'll get to.
More on that later.
On Hanukkah, Hanukkah actually has a dual history, a dual purpose. Hanukkah has become known as the holiday where we celebrate the miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 days. The Greeks had laid siege to Jerusalem and had ransacked the temple, and there was no oil left to light the menorah. And the legend goes, the lore goes, that the Jews, the Maccabees, were successful in finding a tiny, tiny jug of oil that shouldn't have even lasted one night, but lasted the whole 8 days and illuminated the temple and was the very beginning of an effort to reclaim the temple for the Jewish people, to rebuild and ultimately rededicate the temple in service of God. And the Hebrew word for Hanukkah actually means dedication. So what we're doing when we're observing this 8-day period of light is we are actually celebrating the ability that we had to rededicate our temple after coming very close to destruction.
That sounds like a great story. I'm sure there's no other story that involves lots of violence and other things that could possibly mar this really lovely holiday that's just about lighting candles.
Not at all. Not at all. So the other side of the Hanukkah story, which is a little bit more troubling, which has not, for good reason, made its way so prominently into, let's say, pop culture or the public observance of Hanukkah, is that it's actually a holiday that commemorates a violent, bloody political war between the Maccabees, the Jewish Maccabees, and the Greeks.
When I was little, as I assume you had this experience, you watched the Rugrats Hanukkah special, in which Tommy Pickles says a Maccababy's got to do what a Maccababy's got to do, and everything is just fun and games and nice fun lights. But no, this was an issue that King Antiochus, this Greek king, was attempting to have a forced Hellenization. A forced rule in the ancient kingdom of Israel, that his statue was going to be put in all the temples, and they were going to have to sacrifice non-kosher animals in the temples to his statue. Jews were not going to be allowed to have their distinctive names, their distinctive clothes. All of these things that made Jews were outlawed. And there was this group, the Maccabees, led by Mattathias and Judah Maccabee, Judah the Hammer, the original WWE, superhero. He led this band, and it was guerrilla warfare. It was an uprising by these Hasmonean, by these Maccabees against the Greeks that ended with it was a David and Goliath story. We got a few of those. And the Israelites winning and kicking the Assyrian Greeks out of their land. And that was how they came to reclaim the temple, at which point we get this really nice, fun story about the lights. And it's really interesting, right, that the rabbis, and this isn't just like a modern thing that we kind of put down the violence and we raise up the lights, that even by the time of the Talmud in the year 700 CE, the rabbis were already giving primary focus to that holiday of the lights. That there was this idea that there's this nice holiday that we can celebrate and it's a miracle and we focus on God and light and all of those things and not so much the bloody political uprising that made that possible.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting, and hopefully we'll talk more about this in another episode, but what's really interesting about the projects of the rabbis, particularly the authors of the Talmud, is that they are tasked with the impossible exercise of trying to imagine Judaism in the aftermath of the destruction of the temples. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense to me that in an effort to sort of rebrand or make Judaism, which until that point had been extremely risky and had been decimated and taken away from the Jewish people, to make it exciting and livable and meaningful, not to say that there isn't history or that there aren't important ritual restrictions or obligations, but it makes sense to me that that's why the rabbis would sort of reframe Hanukkah in that way, as a joyous festival of light, because, as Jews, we need sweet things to hang on to because our history is so fraught.
Right. And when we are mostly living as minorities in other communities, right? As here in Kentucky, Jews are not in charge of things. Jews are definitely in the minority. That when you're a minority group and you're celebrating a holiday about a minority group's violent political uprising against the majority group, then that majority group might not be so thrilled to hear about it, mm-hmm. right? That there was also a sense that we don't want to celebrate that part too much, because if we did, then people might think we were aspiring to do that again. And that that for a long time, the rabbis didn't want Hanukkah to get wrapped up in that story because they wanted to maybe fly under the radar a little bit more. And that, to address one of the elephants in the room about Hanukkah is it's also kind of often thought of as the Jewish Christmas, mm-hmm. right? It's this holiday around the same time of year. There's Christmas lights. There's Hanukkah lights. Oh, this is great. We're all celebrating, festive light occasions at, this time. And so I don't think the rabbis wanted to get wrapped up in the politics of no, this is actually about us fighting against mm-hmm. the whatever the dominant culture is, that there was actually an ease of sinking into that. Now, what that's led to today is kind of this intense intermingling of the holidays that can feel uncomfortable as a Jewish person. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's part of what the rabbis were afraid of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, to go back to sort of our fraught, tenuous history, we have always had a delicate relationship with the powers that be mm-hmm. in the places that we live in the diaspora. And I think you're absolutely right that the rabbis are cautious about potentially rocking the boat in that sense. And one thing that I think, to sort of tackle this challenge that we did really well in Lexington over the last few years, shout out to the Jewish Federation of the Bluegrass, is that we joined the Lexington-wide, holiday kickoff Christmas tree lighting at the very beginning of the holiday season. And then later, when it was Hanukkah, we actually set up a public menorah, and had programming for each night of Hanukkah in a public park downtown. And our menorah stayed lit. We had a big electric menorah, and it stayed lit for the full week, for the full 8 days. And each night, a different community group would come and organize, singing or a tech study, or there would be ice skating for the kids. And it felt like a really nice way for us to say, look, we're part of a bigger mm-hmm. community that is interfaith and diverse and beautiful here in Lexington. So we're not going to shy away from, especially when we've been invited as the Jewish community to participate in a bigger civic event. We're going to lean into that, but we're also going to maintain our holiday as a separate and distinct public event that Lexingtonians can learn about because we're set up in Triangle Park.
I think that is so awesome. I think that's really, really amazing because I think that this time of year can be very tricky for Jews to navigate. That, when we're checking out in a supermarket, everyone wishes us Merry Christmas. And like for me, I don't take offense to that. I wish the person Merry Christmas back because they were wishing it in a kind way. They were not trying to make me feel bad at all. It was just what they were doing. And I don't feel a need to say back like, happy holidays or happy Hanukkah to you. Like it doesn't feel a need to do that, but I love that y'all were able to do that, to have that individual celebration and have that unique celebration while also recognizing your place within the broader community. I think that's really awesome.
Thanks. And that was actually our event at Triangle Park was actually where I first met Governor Bashir. He came down with the mayor of Lexington, Mayor Linda Gorton, and some other city council members. And he helped light the menorah.
That's really awesome.
And it was really, really awesome. And it was just great to be with him.
Yeah. And it is also a funny time because I don't know if this is true for you, but confession, I love Christmas music. And so this is right. I was about to say they're mostly written by Jews.
Yep.
So we have this really interesting moment, right, where that, when I turn on, Dreaming of a White Christmas by Irving Berlin, he's Jewish. Because Jews have become so, and this is a good thing that we've become comfortable in America, that we have been able to integrate into American society, that some of those distinctions we start to lose. And so I think creating those spaces where we can loudly and proudly celebrate our thing and say, yes, it is a part of this whole holiday season where it's beautiful. And I love it when there are some years that Ramadan also is in the winter,
right.
And we can all celebrate our what our faiths are doing together. And we can recognize, this is our thing and that's your thing. That you can have a tree and that's amazing. We're going to have a Hanukkah. We're going to have a menorah. And that doesn't mean that yours is, bad and ours is good. It just means that yours is for you and ours is for us. And I love the way that y'all set it up, it sounds like, in Lexington, to be able to have that collaboration without forcing everyone to be the same. Because that's what Antiochus was trying to do. That's what the whole uprising was against, was the forced sameness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so should we maybe change gears and talk a little bit about presents and food?
Let's talk about our thing.
Okay,
so
awesome.
Shani, I hear you have some good present history on Hanukkah.
Yes, I've been waiting. I've been very excited to share this story with the pod. So everyone remembers American Idol. Everyone remembers the second season of American Idol. No,
of course.
Okay,
we
I'll
all
remind
remember
everyone.
the second season of American Idol, Shani.
Ruben Studdard, Clay Aiken.
Yes.
Ruben Studdard won.
Clay Aiken later ran for Congress in North Carolina. Oh. Fun fact. Sorry. Okay, continue. Sorry, didn't mean to throw you off.
It's okay. I didn't know that. I should know that. I was in love with Clay Aiken. I was a diehard Clay Aiken fan. And one year for Hanukkah, I begged my parents for his CD. And every year, I forget which night of Hanukkah, but we would go to my aunt and uncle's house, and my whole extended family on my dad's side would come, and we would celebrate Hanukkah together. And I'm one of the younger cousins in the family. And we pull up to my aunt and uncle's house, and I had a feeling that my parents were going to give me the Clay Aiken CD.
The magical CD.
That night. And I said, thank you so much, just in advance. And if it's okay with you, I don't want you to give me the CD at the Hanukkah party tonight, because I knew that I would, that everyone would make fun of me. My older cousins would laugh at me because it wasn't cool to like Clay Aiken. So I begged my parents to hold on to it and give it to me in the car when we got back, from the party. And they were really hurt. They were like, we were so excited to give you the CD, and why are you embarrassed? And it was very funny. And then they respected my wishes, but I loved that CD and wore it out. And
what was your favorite track on that CD?
If I Were Invisible, which we have some cringing faces here in the studio. Yeah, it's horrible. It's a bleak part of my past. But a core Hanukkah memory that I thought I would just share in the interest of, vulnerability and
Amazing.
yeah.
My family, so my birthday's right around Hanukkah.
Right.
And so often then your gifts get intermingled, and which kind of, is a bummer because you don't get separate gifts.
Yeah.
It's also one of those things where, yes, you do have 8 nights. And especially if you have a big family and you go to different people on different nights, you can get some really good gifts. But often there's at least 1 or 2 nights where your gifts are a book or the classic one is socks. I never got socks for Hanukkah. I don't know how that became a thing in pop culture.
I don't think I did either.
But you get some nights will be better than others, and some nights you get kind of lame gifts. Just well, at least in my family, my mom and dad gave me wonderful presents, and I'm thankful for all of them. But some nights were just better than others. But what was always amazing on Hanukkah, and this is what I want to talk about more, is the food. So because it is a holiday that celebrates oil, we cook in oil, and so that means that everything is more delicious. If at least in my opinion, everything cooked in oil always more delicious. So there are 2 main Hanukkah foods in the Ashkenazi world. Ashkenazi are Jews of Eastern European descent. Most Jews in America, though certainly not all, come from this Ashkenazi culture. And the 2 main Hanukkah foods are latkes, which are fried potato pancakes, and sufganiyot, which are jelly donuts. If you have been around any Polish communities, they're often called puchkis. They're eaten on Fat Tuesday in many Polish communities. But they're basically just big jelly-filled donuts, and they're delicious.
And if you've ever been to Israel around Hanukkah time,
Oh
for a month leading up to Hanukkah, and obviously all throughout the holiday, bakeries all over the country will have elaborate, different flavors of sufganiyot that are just unbelievable.
They're amazing. But as a person who also went to the University of Texas and has experienced the Texas State Fair, I just have a deep love of all fried foods. And so whereas there are the traditional fried foods that one might eat on Hanukkah, and they're also in Sephardi and Turkish cultures, there are other fried foods. There's a really great, and I'm going to blank on the name and I feel really bad, but shout out to my sister's partner, Jacob Abudaram, who makes these really amazing zucchini fried pancakes that are really incredible. But I just like frying things. And so because my birthday is around Hanukkah, I will often host Hanukkah parties where you just basically bring whatever you want and we'll fry it. So we've fried rugelach, which are these sweet rolls. We've fried apple pie pockets. We've fried onions. We've done corn dogs. We just make all sorts of fun. We just have basically a big, pot of oil, and people bring things. You dip them in batter. You throw them in. Fried Oreos, fried butter. Fried butter, by the way, really good. It gets a bad rap. It's basically just biscuit dough with a little bit of butter inside. And so it's basically a biscuit with the butter melted already in and fried. It's really good. Don't knock it till you've tried it. And so, so Hanukkah is a time of year in which I break out a little bit because I stand over oil a lot, but that I deeply, deeply enjoy for all of the delicious foods that come along with it.
And then for the latkes, right, we have to talk about the timeless debate. Are
Yes,
you
of
a
course.
sour cream or an applesauce kind of guy?
It's a great question. I'm going to go with, so between sour cream and applesauce, I'm an applesauce kind of guy, but I recently discovered brisket on latkes, which is really just better than either of them. Highly, highly recommend if you get the opportunity. Again, none of my Hanukkah recommendations are good for you. I fully recognize this. I had a theory at one point that because oil is a lubricant, that it lubricates your veins and arteries and makes the blood flow more easily.
That's one way to think about it.
I don't think there's any grounding in fact for that, but it's what I'm sticking with.
Insert, a very fast-talking medical disclaimer for this part of the segment, just to...
Cardiologists love me, okay?
So growing up, I didn't know about sour cream on latkes. We only had...
So you just didn't know sour cream was a thing.
Well, we didn't eat a lot of dairy foods, that's the truth. But
Fair enough.
only knew applesauce.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, the debate was plain applesauce or cinnamon applesauce. And then I think in college, or maybe even after, was at a Hanukkah party and they served sour cream. And my head exploded. It was the most delicious thing I'd ever tried. And I discovered that actually combining the applesauce and the sour cream is really the best way to do it. Then you don't have to make an impossible choice.
You're bringing the people together, Shani. It's beautiful.
That's what the pod's all about.
That's what the pod's all about. It's the schmooze. It's the schmooze.
The schmooze. That's what the schmooze is all about.
That's it for this month in Judaism. When we come back, it's time to kibitz with a Kentuckian. the Louisville Orchestra's music director, Teddy Abrams.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Welcome back to the Bluegrass Schmooze. We are joined now by Teddy Abrams, the widely acclaimed music director of the Louisville Orchestra. Teddy's been with the orchestra since 2014. He's collaborated with a wide variety of organizations and artists, including Jim James, Yo-Yo Ma, the Louisville Ballet, the Center for Interfaith Relations, the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and more. He's been a guest conductor everywhere from Utah to Helsinki, and he's an accomplished pianist and clarinetist who's performed all over the world. Teddy, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you for making the time to schmooze with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
We are really thrilled to have you. So, in addition to all of those amazing accomplishments, we'd love to hear, we are the Bluegrass Schmooze, we'd love to hear a little bit about your Jewish background. What, if you were putting together your Jewish bio or your Jewish resume, what would that look like?
Well, it would be very short. I didn't even have a bar mitzvah. So there we go. That about sums it all up. Although I did try. I will admit I tried. And there's a bit of a story behind it. It's not a very good story.
Can we pause there? I'd love to hear more about what it looked like to try to have a bar mitzvah. That's so interesting.
Well, I did study for it, and when we used to live in the part of the San Francisco Bay Area that's called the East Bay. It's where Oakland and Berkeley are, and that's where I lived up until I was about 13 or 14. So around the time I should have had my bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And I was actually taking lessons to prepare. I had a lovely tutor who had used to be, I think she was the teacher in the Saturday school I was going to. So there was a time when I was going to temple, semi-regularly.
Yeah.
And then just around the time we should have probably scheduled the bar mitzvah, my family moved to another part of the Bay Area, the South Bay, which is where Stanford and Palo Alto and the Silicon Valley part of the Bay Area. And we stopped going to temple regularly. Never scheduled my bar mitzvah. My brothers never got theirs either. And my Jewish life ended.
So I have two questions. One is, as someone who, you're a musician, you rehearse for things and then you perform them. Did you have was that hard for you that you had prepared for something that then you didn't get to actualize?
Oh, no. I for whatever reason, I love going on stage, performing music, but I was super nervous for this. I was freaking out. I don't know why. I was able to read and everything. I was actually quite prepared. And I wasn't able just to read my own little Torah portion, but I learned to read Hebrew. And I enjoyed it. But for some reason, there are certain things that just absolutely freak me out. I don't know what it was about it, but the idea of getting in front of the congregation and actually doing that Torah portion is the thing that has still prevented me from doing it to this day. Now, okay, I understand that as the third guest on the show, I think I'm also the youngest one, right? Am I the first millennial?
Far. Yes.
So I'm probably the first of many people that are going to start talking about their cultural Jewish identification, right? You're going to have a lot of those if you start getting, people in my age group. I mean, and of course, across all demographics, you get that. But I feel like, so many of the people in my Jewish circles, have a similar background to me. We grew up with some degree of Judaism, and I certainly remember going through the various rites and rituals, and I was able to say all the prayers over the candles at Hanukkah and stuff like that. But then, for whatever reason, in most of my friends' lives, there was some kind of inflection point when things changed, and I think in some cases it was college. For me, it was that move, which really kind of threw our family for a loop, and a lot of things just happened structurally in my family that resulted in these changes. There's obviously a very big backstory. If you want the whole psychological framework for this, that we could do that for a few hours here and scratch the surface. I'm one of the only Jews that's never been to therapy.
Wow.
I don't know if I'm proud of that or embarrassed by it, but I've never done it, and I don't know if this is the time and the place. But I'm the holdout.
Well, rabbis are not therapists, so this will not be your first therapy session.
That's true, but I've been so deprived that I might.
If we were, we wouldn't do it over the radio. I would.
But that makes
right?
for very good radio, right?
It
does.
That's
the kind of thing. But
it does.
No, there's a lot there. Let's put it like that. But you'll have to come find me in person.
We'll have to do an episode part 2. Teddy, I'm so glad you shared that story about your bar mitzvah, and particularly the nervousness and real fear of getting up on the bima, getting up in front of the congregation, and I don't want to say performing, but reading a Torah portion, giving a teaching, leading parts of the service. And I know that a lot of our listeners, and particularly those of our listeners who are preparing for bar bat mitzvah or who are older but thinking about maybe learning how to read Torah for the first time, or any number of things to try for the first time at synagogue, will be so comforted to hear that. So thank you.
Well, I think there are a lot of people like me, but of course, then that you have to then kind of accept the exchange, which is a lifetime of kind of shame and embarrassment, especially when you're at like a more maybe disciplined religious family's house, and they are saying the prayers, and the kids can all say the prayers, and there I am, like, I know the first 3 words. Mm-hmm. I can do that, and then I forget everything else. Like, I think that's part of it too. You have to remember that by not having accepted that into my life in that way, and having that be a structural part of my life, which I think is really important. Mm-hmm. There are 2 things that go along with that. One is kind of, again, that I call it the social shame. So when I am amongst more religious Jews, I feel kind of left out. I'm sad that when I go to a traditional Orthodox synagogue, which I've done every once in a while, that I don't know what on earth is going on. So you've got the personal shame, and then say I told you they're going to get this therapy in right now for free. But then you have, I think, the bigger, more historical shame, because I have to assume, depending on what version of historical events you believe, whether we're going back to like ancient Egypt or we're going back to what the Khazars and the whole, okay, we're not going to get into that, but whichever one you believe, okay, there's a very long, unbroken kind of family tree of, we have to just imagine, because I can go back about 4 or 5 generations of my family, but we just have to imagine, dozens, if not hundreds of generations of Abramses and Diamonds, that's my mom's side, all doing these things, right? These traditions, and keeping alive this incredible practice. And here I am, I come along, the first. And I have the hubris to break that strand of either 1 or 3,000 years, depending on our historical interpretation. And that's upsetting. That bothers me a lot. I don't want to be the one.
So I'd love to follow that up with then. So you mentioned that it's kind of a millennial thing, but I think there are also plenty, as you said, in previous generations who might identify as culturally Jewish or Jewish but not religious. So I'm curious for you, what does it mean to you to be Jewish? That if it doesn't have the religious structure, as you put it, what does it mean to you? What, like, when you identify as Jewish, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because, of course, my personal identity is so connected to my profession, or vocation, as you might call it, as a musician, where there is such a history of Jews coming before me and continuing to be a part of this world of, whether it's classical music or music overall. I mean, the Jewish involvement in entertainment, and specifically music, is just broad beyond belief. Like it even continues to shock me when I find out people that I didn't realize were Jewish are, and just the depth of Jewish involvement on stage in America, but of course around the world is just enormous. So you're never far from that. You're never far from that realization. I mean, my own lineage as a musician is incredibly connected to a kind of cultural Judaism. My teacher growing up was Michael Tilson Thomas. The last name Michael Tilson Thomas is deceptive if you're not familiar with his story. His real last name is Tomaszewski. That's his family's historical last name. For anybody that knows anything about musical theater or should know something about musical theater, Tomaszewski is one of the most important names in American culture. Boris and Bessie Tomaszewski were Michael Tilson Thomas's grandparents. They came over from the old country. They came over from Berdichev, I believe, and founded the Yiddish theater in America. They were the ones that trained people like Gershwin and Irving Berlin. They created the model and the mode of theatrical communication that became musical theater. That when it was fused with popular music, particularly jazz and swing, became modern musical theater. So this was my teacher. And now on a different kind of path, his teacher was Leonard Bernstein. And he worked with Aaron Copland and had a deep relationship with him for much of Copland's life and much of his. And this is the framework for my own music making. So on the one hand, I'm having this kind of religious identity issue, but on the other hand, I'm deeply involved in what it means to be an American Jewish musician. That's always been extremely close to my own sense for who I am. I'm carrying on that cultural tradition. It's more than just what I would say kind of a spineless idea of cultural Judaism. We know what that means. That's the Church of Larry David, and I am a huge member of the Church of Larry David. I quote from season and chapter. I know you name. I play a game with my friends. We can say one word and reference the episode. Like I am a part of that, but it's more for me because I think a lot of that cultural identification doesn't come with, again, the discipline that gives it, the deeper meaning. So anyway, just getting back to that, the musical side is for me a place where my Judaism is an extremely important part because it's so connected to my identity and the one that I received as a young musician, learning the kind of skills that I use every day now. Right.
And I'm curious, thinking about the fact that, just three of these greats who you mentioned, right? Leonard Bernstein, Michael Tilson Thomas, Leonard Slatkin, the Tomaszewskis. What do you attribute that relationship to? The connection between, Judaism, Jewish identity, maybe even the immigrant experience to creating really what has become known as the canon of American Jewish music. Do you think there's any particular connection there?
Yeah, that's a question we ask ourselves all the time. Why did Jews become so influential in music and entertainment overall? And of course, we know that comes with a kind of dark side because people attribute that to all kinds of things, whether it's the things like some kind of strange alliance between Jews that found a way to rise to the top of the entertainment world, or then the absolute wackadoodles that think there's some like reptilian conspiracy. Okay, but aside from that, it is curious to ask at least the question why in a country where really the Jewish population is so small overall. Aside from what it might feel like to be in New York,
right?
At times, but it is so small overall. How is it that if you think about American classical music and you name anybody, there are very high chances that you're going to start talking about Jewish Americans. You're talking about Leonard Bernstein and Copland and Gershwin. If you just start with those three,
right?
That alone would be just a strange coincidence if there was one. So I think that, though, the answer is like many things about Jewish identity, it's deeply historical and cultural. And I can actually tell you my family history as a kind of parable here or an example. And I'll do it briefly. But my family came over from the old country, sometime between the late 19th century and the early 20th. Most of my family came over in that period. There weren't really people that were escaping the Nazis. It was an earlier kind of pogrom situation that they were coming to America to escape. And they came over to not be musicians. They were one strand of this. The whole point was like music that's not what we came to America to do. We came to America to be financially successful, and musicians are not financially successful. So everybody in my family went into some form of like either being a lawyer, there are tons and tons of lawyers, or something that would be considered more of a professional kind of path. And then the weirdest thing happened back in the 80s and early 90s. So this is before the end of the Cold War, before the Iron Curtain came down. I had a family member that started going back to Eastern Europe to try and find the parts of our family that never made it to America. And he went and used Budapest as kind of a springboard because that was the most open means of accessing the Soviet Union at the time. And he discovered all these people. So they're 5 generations later, but they were all still in the Soviet Union. So they were in Russia and Poland and Ukraine and Lithuania. Turns out tons of them were musicians. So left in their natural environment for 5 generations, they'd been musicians, and he eventually brought them to the U.S. and they continue to be musicians here. But 5 generations in America, they went off in a different direction. And I think this kind of illuminates the point. Like people came to America from these situations where the idea of success was clearly defined. And I think we kind of crystallized it into 2 things. Either you're going to do something that's going to be traditionally financially successful, and that does not mean the arts, or you're going to be an artist, and if you are, you better be the very best. You better be the most famous musician ever. I mean, there are the famous stories of Bernstein's father trying to get him to not be a musician. Right? The same thing happened to Gershwin. If you're going to do this, then you better be the world's greatest. So there was that pressure because it's like we did not come across Europe. We did not escape whatever horrors we encountered there for you to not make anything of yourselves in the traditional sense. So I think that explains kind of why you have those 2 versions of kind of like Jewish cultural pathways that lead to certain things that are still articulated now.
Yeah.
I want to say that, before we were talking about not having a bar mitzvah and what it means to be maybe a break in the chain. And just to hear you share that, so many of your ancestors in the old country were musicians. You are such an important link in a different kind of chain for your family, and having that ancestral connection, it just sounds, you share it so powerful and so important. And I just have a quick follow-up. When we think about Jewish communities in places like New York or LA or Chicago or Miami, Jewish culture is more ubiquitous, more visible. It's sort of all around us in a different way. And I'm curious what it has been like for you to feel so deeply rooted and connected to your Jewish identity and historical Jewish identity through American music in Kentucky, in a place where the Jewish population is very small, and how you sort of navigate that, connectedness and that really deep sense of connection to that part of your identity, your Jewish identity, in a place where Judaism is just not as visible.
Yeah, that also is an interesting thing to consider. I mean, even when I was in some of these other larger kind of Jewish population environments, I don't know that I was so directly connected to Jewish life in the spiritual sense that there has been a big difference. But it doesn't seem to matter where you are, even in a place like this with a smaller Jewish population. Jews are still very connected to the arts. So I don't feel like I'm not seeing Jewish people all the time. I mean, I am. Even the history of the Louisville Orchestra reaches back to a Jewish orchestra that existed, and the Louisville Orchestra, as it's now formatted, which began its history in 1937 in the wake of the Great Flood, was actually formed from the bones of this Jewish orchestra that had been playing for several decades in Louisville. So at any given time, if you're a musician, especially and you're dealing with a large arts organization, you're probably going to know the Jewish population in town just because of our history of being involved in the arts, whether making the art or philanthropically. So and also just early on, we did a lot of collaborating with the Jewish population here, whether it was the temples directly or through programming downtown at Whitney Hall. But but it's been a very important part of the way we've programmed. I think partly because I think that programming has to be incredibly broad and reflect the community, but it also needs to be personal in a way that you feel when you're programming something, this is the message that I want to convey. And so much of American Jewish music is connected to these people that I studied with or worked with, and so I've wanted to put that on display over and over and over again. So you look at the programming that we've done around American music, or now around this combination of Jewish and Black composers, and it very much speaks to my own identity, and in a way. Okay, so even if we don't have a big Jewish neighborhood, we don't have like the Lower East Side of Louisville exactly, right? But you can make that. You can build a framework for people to feel like they are seeing their own history and their own identities expressed at the orchestra, and that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, I'd love to follow up on that because I'm a fan of the Journeys of Faith program, this connection of the Black and Jewish music. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more. We're now in year, I think, 3 out of 4. For this program. First of all, I guess you talked a little bit about just now of what inspired it, is this kind of you wanting to put this forward, but what are you hoping comes out of it? Like, why put on a 4-year program of Black and Jewish music? What are you hoping comes out of that for the Jewish community of Louisville, for the Black community of Louisville, for the orchestra? What's kind of your vision there?
Yeah, this was a really important thing for us because this came out of a year of introspection following Breonna Taylor, where I think every arts organization that was responsible for some kind of programming in the country coming out of that summer, the summer of 2020, considered their programs from a new perspective, right? Usually thinking about social justice or race in a way that they hadn't, or maybe it hadn't been as explicit. I watched a lot of organizations program in a way that I thought was well-intentioned, but somehow didn't seem terribly honest. A lot of, especially classical music organizations, immediately just rushed for quick solutions and ideas that didn't seem to come from a place where this was really what people wanted to express. It was just to kind of scare off the Twitter horde. And I did not want to program in a way that it was just out of fear that somebody would add up the number of pieces that we played and say, oh, well, this percentage wasn't enough X, Y, and Z demographic. That's no way to program. That's not coming from a place of deep understanding and meeting and meditation on something that you believe in. And so after a long time, I was thinking, okay, this is where both the community and the personal intersect. I actually feel deeply connected to the subject matter of Black and Jewish musicians and the intersection of these two populations because I am yet another white Jewish musician who learned to play jazz, who learned to play popular music that derives its power and history from Black music. So this is something that's very personal for me. It's also a subject matter that has not been explored fully. Now, there's certainly many scholars that have written about the relationships to one extent or another, especially zooming in on one particular relationship, maybe Gershwin's connections to the Black community. Like that's been explored. But the overall dynamic, especially from a more classical perspective of Black and Jewish musicians, has not been celebrated. But it also comes with a fraught history. There's been a lot of mistrust, and a lot of history of feeling like folks have taken advantage of situations, or maybe there hasn't been an acknowledgement of the provenance of this music. And there's also been tremendous work to celebrate, but it runs so deep. Of course, you have like classical composers who have generally been white using Black music, but you also have Jewish entrepreneurs and record executives who've absolutely believed in Black music and found a way to put it out there on a national and international stage that it might not have had otherwise. Sometimes it's been exploitative, but it's also sometimes been incredibly celebratory. So how do we delve into this subject matter with the means and the hope that we're going to bring the populations together in Louisville as a symbol for how we're going to find a chord. We're going to take the best of what we've got and then put it out there on a stage so that we can celebrate that and further the collaboration. And in doing so, hopefully it sparks all kinds of things that are extra musical, conversations, collaborations, discussions between synagogues and Black churches that wouldn't have happened otherwise, or maybe wouldn't have had the forum to do it. Our power to convene is immense as an orchestra. We have a huge stage and a huge audience that we can bring together to look at a subject matter like this. And if we do it in a really honest way, what we're going to find is that the reason Black gospel singing so often centers around Old Testament music. And the reason so many white Jewish musicians immediately found themselves drawn towards Black music is because of the similarities. It's because of the shared history. It's because of the shared oppression. It's because of the shared sense of an outsider in America. But it's also in the same sense of solidarity. And we're going to find that accord if we program in a really honest and principled way. So that's where that kind of programming came from.
Yeah, so over the past year here in Louisville, synagogues and Black churches have been pairing up, and in the last iteration of this program, there was a newer piece based on the works of Baldwin, and then also Bernstein's Age of Anxiety. And so my synagogue paired up with a Black church, and we studied Baldwin texts next to biblical texts about anxiety and Talmudic texts about anxiety. And we talked about our anxieties and our fears as Jews and as Black people in America, and where they've overlapped and where they haven't, and what are the similarities and what are the differences, and had some of those really wonderful conversations. And it was really thanks to, right through this prompting and through this forum creation, as you said, of the orchestra. And as people are listening, this is our Kislev episode. So coming up in January, there's going to be some amazing concerts with gospel and klezmer musicians. So make sure to check out the Louisville Orchestra website for more information about those performances.
Yeah, this is huge, actually. This is, as you said, it's the third year of what we originally envisioned, a 4-year celebration of Black and Jewish music and musicians. But I mean, hopefully it becomes a thing we do every single year indefinitely. But
Great.
This year is way over the top. It is the joining of gospel and klezmer. And we have really blended it. We haven't done, what is it in food when you just fold in? No, we're doing the full on. What would it be? The stirring. What's the Vitamix setting? That's the one. Pulse,
blend, pulse. Yeah, sure, something like that.
That's right. But these are my cooking credentials. But anyway, it's going to be really, really, really special because we are absolutely joining together these musics that come from the same source, the same kind of improvisatory sense, the same kind of pain that resulted in certain blue notes being as much a part of klezmer as they are blues. And that's what's going to be on display. This is really, really, really cool. Not to mention the St. Stephen's Gospel Choir, one of the best in the world, and they're going to be at the center of it. Wow,
I would love to bring some folks from Lexington to come see some of those shows, those performances.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you've got to come. And David Krakauer, one of the greatest klezmer clarinet players of all time, is helping. And they've all programmed this together. It's a really beautiful thing to see. So I'm so excited about this concert. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting. And also, this has not been done before.
Right.
Weirdly, this is an original thing.
So to kind of take a little bit of a left turn, as this is our Kislev episode, we talked a lot about Hanukkah in the first half of this episode. And one of the things that we talked about is that there's a lot of Christmas music that's written by Jews. And there, you mentioned Irving Berlin before, obviously White Christmas. And there's just a thing when, at least, I was in choir for like a hot second in middle school maybe, but like we sang Ave Maria or something. And there's just like, as a Jewish person in music, you do get to do a lot of your own things, and you're part of this Jewish lineage, but you also end up both writing and performing a lot of music that is not necessarily intended for you.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could maybe perhaps opine or think about why so many Jews became so many of the ballads of Christmas, or the balladeers of Christmas, and why that may have happened.
Well, there's a practical history to it, and then there's also, I would say, a more psychological / emotional history to it. I mean, the practical thing is that the Jewish population of Manhattan in the first half of the 20th century centered around entertainment, whether it was musical theater or Tin Pan Alley, which was connected to it. And again, we talked about why so many Jews went into music and achieved a certain excellence, but it was dominated by Jewish songwriters. Not everybody, obviously, but a lot of Jews were working in Tin Pan Alley, putting out song after song after song. They were song pluggers. That was the whole point. They were writing the shows, whether they were the Broadway revues or the Follies or the actual full-on musicals, from which individual songs were extracted that became the hits of the day. I mean, that was where we derived so much of the popular song that would then be rearticulated in swing bands that would play covers of this, of the great the great singers of the day who would take those hits and then make them their own. I mean, that's where we got Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. I mean, they were singing things that had usually kind of come up like a volcanic process because in many cases a Jewish songwriter was writing something for a review or a show, and it would be like the single, the equivalent of the single that would then become a national sensation, and everybody would have to cover it and make it their own. So it just made sense that if people were looking for, again, like in modern Hollywood, if they're doing a Christmas movie, you know, the people that are in power and are the writers are going to be the ones that then are producing that, and Jews were around to do it. So that's kind of like practical history, but the more emotional one is that I think just having some distance from anything allows you to be maybe more incisive. This is just my own theorizing here. This is not supported by any scholarship, but I think that if you're Irving Berlin and you're writing a Christmas song, you have just enough distance that you don't get into like, maybe it's the strange, kind of overly indulgent sappiness that you might have if you were emotionally tied to a holiday. And perhaps it's that slight distance. I even tried to write one. I wrote this. I'm actually really proud of this song. It's had 0 radio play, hint. But I really like this song. It's called Lonely Christmas. And I feel like I was able to write this thing because I don't like Christmas. I don't like the holidays, but with my, this kind of force field of never having indulged in Christmas, I could then write about it in a way that felt kind of true.
Can you send this to us? Can we play it on the podcast?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
you're welcome.
amazing.
I'm really proud of this song.
Yeah.
And again, we released it, and I think 7 people have heard it.
Okay, well we'll blast it out.
I remember growing up every year, and I grew up in an Orthodox community where we were very far removed from Christmas, but every year we all, packed in the car and drove around and looked at the Christmas lights in the neighborhood, and it was something we always looked forward to. So seeing Christmas lights, around Lexington and anywhere really is so nostalgic, and it brings me into this experience that I'm not part of at all, but somehow feels deeply American and part of this bigger cultural milieu that we're all participating in, but even still having great cultural and religious distance from it. And so I'm just thinking about that you're helping me think about those memories in a new kind of way. So thank you. It's really interesting.
Well, and I think, as you said, like every Jewish person in America has some relationship to Christmas that they have to go through. And I think we all feel this weird sense there's this nostalgic kind of, it's almost like a phantom memory of Christmases that we should have had because we grow up with this. I mean, it is the outsider element, and I think there's kind of a Christmas envy that we all have, right? It's impossible to fully shake that, and I feel like I did have Christmas as a kid, even though I did not. But I've developed that because it is connected to a sense of being American. In music, though, somehow the external elements always melt away in favor of the human elements, the ultimate or spiritual ones, but the things that are truly universal, they're not sectarian. And look at the number of Jewish musicians that have interpreted true Christian works, or even beyond Christian from other traditions. But just thinking of the number of masses of religious works by Bach or Mozart that we perform. And I mean, of course, I guess that maybe in this day of extreme, sense of identity politics or provenance, there could be some questions here. But fortunately, in the past, there was never really a question. If an amazing Jewish musician performed the Messiah or performed the Coronation Mass and did an incredible job, nobody really objected. Nobody said that wasn't their right to perform it. That music that Mozart or Bach wrote or Handel, that's universal property. In the same way that Leonard Bernstein's Third Symphony, the Kaddish, is universal property. It belongs to all of humanity. If a Buddhist or Muslim or Christian wants to perform it and wants to do the best they possibly can to make that music come to life, who on earth am I to object to that? I don't believe in that at all. I mean, these notes are notes. They're pure notes. And let's face it, that whole thing is in Hebrew. I don't even speak Hebrew anymore.
Technically, it's in Aramaic.
In Aramaic. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And nobody speaks that.
No, nobody speaks
Okay, so tell me. Exactly. I worked off of a translation. So tell me that I have more right to do it just because of what? A family history? No, I had a right to perform that piece because I spent time studying it and caring about it. I mean, that's a huge subject matter. But that's why I would like to think that I have the same ability to perform Bach. Even when he's writing at his most Lutheran, it belongs to the universal human. That's what he's writing. So and maybe there's something about Christmas and Hanukkah that approaches that same universal spirit of something that's trying to be conveyed, which is why maybe Irving Berlin got it right.
Beautiful. So we're going to transition into our lightning round, which is something we do with each of our guests.
Uh-oh.
And it's 6 rapid fire questions about Jewish culture. And we'd love to hear your response. So I'm going to start, and then we'll just pass it back. Favorite Jewish holiday?
Okay, I'm really bad at lightning rounds, by the way. But I don't even know all the Jewish.
Just pick, but you don't need to know all of them.
I
Just
liked
your favorite.
Passover as a kid. That was my favorite as a kid.
There you go. Passover. Wonderful. Honey cake or apples and honey?
A honey cake sounds better.
Okay, there we go.
I don't know if I've had one.
We'll have to fix that.
Okay.
Best Purim costume for yourself or that you've seen?
Which one is this?
Or the holiday where we dress up.
Yeah, what do we dress up as?
Sometimes, well, these days anything. Traditionally, Haman or Esther or Mordecai, like the characters from the Book of Esther.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's all
coming back to
me.
you. Yeah.
It's not Halloween or Diwali though. Yeah,
No.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll have to pass on. You can choose for me. I don't do costumes though, but I wouldn't have an answer if it was a question about Halloween either.
Fair enough. On Yom Kippur, we fast all day, and then we have a break fast at the end of the day. What would be your first food that you would go for if you had not eaten anything all day? Your break fast food.
Yes. Well, you're supposed to say bagels and lox.
That's a good answer. That is a very good answer.
Okay, we're going to go with that. That's the right answer.
There's no right answer. Someone said chocolate cake the other day.
But there is a wrong answer.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
like pork.
That
barbecue
would be
is the wrong answer.
Suboptimal, probably.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say herring, and I was almost crushed.
I love
that would be the wrong answer.
gefilte fish. Wait, herring's bad?
No, herring's great.
I thought herring's good.
No, herring's
I
great.
love herring.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's your answer.
I like Jewish food.
Okay.
Of course. I'm culturally Jewish.
Favorite biblical character?
Oh. Like messed up weird one? Like Lot?
However you interpret it.
Sure.
Lot? Okay.
I mean, or like New Testament weird?
Well,
No.
We're sticking with the Hebrew Bible. But Lot is really out of left field. That's a good one.
Well, that story is so weird.
It
I'm sure we
very
could talk about this
Yeah.
a lot more. But
You can talk about that one in therapy.
Somebody's going to quote me and say my favorite is Lot. That's going to be really messed up.
All right, and your final lightning round question is: do you prefer Hamantaschen or Latkes? Hamantaschen or the
I know
tri-
that.
okay,
That
okay.
I
That
do
one
know.
you know. Okay.
No, I know about the food. I just
Okay.
I think latkes.
Latkes?
Yeah.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean,
I
I
think that's the
I
right
do like
answer.
Hamantaschen, no. I actually have memories of making the latkes with my family, and so
Nice.
that was very nice.
Nice.
Oh, how embarrassing!
I do have a bonus lightning round
Oh, no.
question,
Oh.
which is your favorite piece of Jewish music.
Ooh, that's
Oh,
a good
wow.
bonus lightning round question.
Okay, this is interesting. Now, by Jewish, does it need to be overtly religious, or could it just be a Jewish composer?
It's the lightning
Just to
round.
do anything, yeah.
Just
anything.
what first thing that comes to your head.
Okay, this is interesting. But Mahler's Second Symphony, which is famously called the Resurrection, but it's not about Jesus. Okay, well, Jesus was Jewish. He was the most
true.
famous Jew. He's really the most famous one. Anyway, but no, it's not about Jesus. It's about the concept of a hero who has some kind of like spiritual awakening. and recognition. But that piece, because Mahler was deeply Jewish, even though he tried to hide it, to escape the critics. But like that piece is really one of the most powerful and profoundly spiritual pieces, and it references so much Jewish music in it. I would put that up there at the very, very top. Yeah, I think that goes way up. Oh God, there's so many.
That's
now.
good. No. You did your lightning
I
round.
was about to say Steve Reich's Tehillim, which is really incredible. Yeah, I'm not good at
we
lightning rounds.
We got to cut you off. Our final question for you is we give a l'chaim of the month at the end of every episode. So who is one person or organization or body that you want to give a l'chaim to this month?
Well, I would normally give one to the orchestra to a certain extent, but I will, but I'll put a little caveat because it's not just like this is not to myself, but the reason is kind of like a shul or like a community that would form a congregation, right? The orchestra is made up of so many people that often people don't recognize or understand how their contributions have given us some of the greatest culture since 1937 in Louisville, and between the obviously the audiences, but the people on stage, each individual is an incredible musician in their own right. Our staff, like you'll never see them. You don't ever get to see these people work their butts off. They do everything that they possibly can, go to the ends of the earth to make sure that we have the most interesting orchestra in America right here. And I want to give them a l'chaim.
Excellent.
I love
it.
Horrible pronunciation.
No,
too.
you nailed it.
But I really want to do because they're such special people, and they don't get the accolades, and people don't often understand their sacrifices and contributions to our city. So that's who I'm shouting out.
That's one. Shani actually gave her l'chaim last month to the staff at her synagogue. So very similar minds there. Shani, who are you l'chaiming? Who's your l'chaim for this month?
My l'chaim for this month, I'm going to keep him nameless, but is my bar mitzvah student who will be celebrating his bar mitzvah this Shabbat.
That's wonderful. And I am going to give a l'chaim. I know this is our Kislev episode, but we're recording it just toward the end of all the holidays of Tishrei. And I'm going to give my l'chaim to my wife, Ariane, who has been so supportive of me and all the work that I've been doing when I've been crazy busy over the past month, and cooking food for tons of people and helping us have a really amazing home throughout the holidays. So that's my l'chaim of the month.
Oh, that's very nice. And one for the black-eyed peas.
And one for the black-eyed peas.
Yes.
All right.
They say that.
They do say l'chaim in their song, yes.
No one ever says it back.
That's true. Well, unless you're in a big Jewish crowd, then everybody says it back.
Oh, do they really?
Oh, yeah. If you're at a bar mitzvah and they play that song, everyone shouts
No one
l'chaim.
has ever invited me to their bar mitzvah.
I am sure that we can rectify that.
But it's probably because I'm not hanging out with kids.
13-year-olds. Right. Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, we should probably end this.
Teddy, thank you so much for schmoozing with us. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much, Teddy.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Make sure to join us again next month, the Jewish month of Tevet, when we discuss whether a giraffe is kosher, and we'll schmooze with top chef Sarah Bradley from the well-known Jewish hotbed of Paducah, Kentucky. Instead of our normal outro music, we're going to take you out this month with Lonely Christmas, Teddy Abrams' Christmas hit that never was, recorded by Morgan James with Teddy himself on piano.
All alone in the middle of the city, all the lights, they are bright and pretty, and the stars twinkle overhead as I walk back into bed. There must be someone else feeling like me, all alone in a house, waiting like me, and I'm afraid that I'll never find you there, and I'll be by myself, waiting for
The Bluegrass Schmooze is created and produced by Rabbi Shani Abramowitz and me, Rabbi Ben Fried. Our executive producer is Laura Ellis.
Production assistance from Alex Biscardi. Our opening and closing song is Jew from Kentucky, written by Dan Byrne and performed by Dan Byrne and Bridget Caitlin.
Thanks to Knesset Israel Congregation in Louisville and Ohave Zion Synagogue in Lexington for believing in two young rabbis and helping us make this podcast a reality. Our show is made possible by support from the Jewish Heritage Fund. The Bluegrass Schmooze is a part of the Louisville Public Media Podcast Incubator, with support from the Eye Care Institute's Butchertown Clinical Trials.
Find us on Instagram for lots of extra content. We're at Bluegrass Schmooze, or send us an email at schmooze@lpm.org.
To keep in touch and to learn how you can help us continue this work, visit bluegrassschmooze.org.
By ourselves, waiting for on this Christmas night, in the winter light, on this Christmas night. These days are for the love that was lost, and I never thought I'd find it. All the houses full of laughter and love, and I've been thinking that I don't deserve it, but I'll never give up hope that there's someone out there who's looking out at the night sky too, all alone in the middle of the city. And I know that someone else is ready to reach out and hold my hand, and we'll walk back into bed. There must be someone else feeling like me, all alone in a house, waiting like me, and I'm afraid that I'll never find you there, and I'll be by myself, waiting for on this Christmas night, in the winter light, on this Christmas night, in the winter light.
Support for LPM podcasts comes from the Eye Care Institute and Butchertown Clinical Trials, where they strive for diversity, equity, and inclusion within their staff, patients, and clinical trial participants. To learn more, visit butchertown.clinic.